Frankenstein's Aunt by Rune Pettersson. Mrs. Frankenstein, you were an unusually full-blooded lady. It was somewhat later on that evening. The black clouds on the horizon had come closer, and thunder was rumbling in the distance. Aunt Frankenstein was in the library reading an old book about vampires she had found on the shelves. She was smoking a cigar, sipping sherry, and leaning over the book to be able to read it in the light from the flickering candles. The lightning problem was one of the things that would have to be put right soon, she thought. The dark windows were lit up by a blue flash of lightning, but a long time went by before the thunder came, a dull rumble rolling away in the distance. It began to rain, large drops rattling on the window panes. Aunt Frankenstein read that vampires originated in Transylvania, a wild mountainous tract in Romania. Vampirism ran in families in a complicated way from family to family. A vampire lived a living death and never rested in peace in his grave, condemned forever to go out at night in search of the blood of living people. And a vampire could only be killed by a stake driven through his heart while he was asleep in his coffin in the daytime. Rather cowardly, Aunt Frankenstein thought, attacking a sleeping person like that. She had always had a strong sense of fair play. The book also said that you could protect yourself from a vampire by rubbing garlic into doors and windows. She knew she would not be in danger from the vampire, for she had taken her daily garlic tablet, which she always did during the dark winter months. She shut the book with a snort. Superstition. Dracula was a skilled illusionist, she was sure of, and he could certainly get a job in a circus with his bat number, but ghost? Oh no, they couldn't tell her stories about ghosts. There was a natural explanation for almost everything, and she still believed that Larry Talbot was a cause for psychoanalysis. Dracula probably was too. Aunt Frankenstein was pessimistic about many things and had a gloomy attitude about life, but she still believed in people's great ability to change. It was her shining light in the veil of tears that stubbornly continued to call itself civilization. She put down her dead cigar stump and sipped at her sherry. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. The door opened with a slow creak, and a black-clad figure in tails could just be seen in the darkness, the lining of his cape glowing red as blood. "Good evening, madam." The voice was veiled and a trifle nasal. "Well, look who's here," said Hannah Frankenstein. "Count Dracula." "So you have got up." "I was woken by the noise on the floor above." Dracula came into the room, his patent leather shoes tapping on the parquet floor. "Oh, really?" said Aunt Frankenstein. "Yes, that was Franz trying to cure Talbot's werewolf fever with a dose of astronomy, but it didn't work very well." "And how did things go for Franz?" Dracula was standing by her armchair, and she could smell the breath of chill and cold stone on his cape. "A slight scratch, that's all, but please do sit down, Count Dracula." "Thank you, madam, but I prefer to stand if you don't mind. For blood circulation reasons, you understand." She reckoned he had given the word blood an unnecessarily ambiguous emphasis. Thunder rumbled, and again in the distance, slightly nearer now, it seemed to her. Dracula was standing stiffly upright beside her armchair, his face white, his eyes glitteringly black in the light of the candles. A rather handsome man, really, she thought, a trifle bloodless, perhaps. Bloodless, she shivered. Had he come to see her in his capacity as a hungry mosquito? She got up and grasped a sherry bottle. "Count Dracula, may I offer you a glass of sherry?" Dracula took a step nearer, a deathly passion glinting in his black eyes. There was no doubt about it. The man was certainly handsome. Tall, too. Tall and handsome. "Count Dracula, a glass of spirits?" "Madam," he said in a subdued voice, "all drinks lose their allure in comparison with you." "Oh, please," said Hannah Frankenstein. "I suppose you say that to all old women, but I haven't much in the bank, I assure you." "Mrs. Frankenstein." He was quite close to her now, his eyes glinting so it seemed to her that she could see the mist-shrouded mountains of Transylvania in their pupils. "They told me you were a lady of mature years, but in my opinion, you are an unusually full-blooded lady. It makes my head whirl to see the blood throbbing in your beautiful throat." She reckoned he really was taking liberties now. If she had had her umbrella there, she would have hit him on the head with it. "Now listen, Count Dracula," she said sharply. "Let's take things a little pianissimo, shall we?" Dracula took a lightning step back, as if he had discovered a snake wound around her neck, his whole face expressing sudden horror. "Oh, damnation!" He hid his face behind his cape. "You've been eating garlic." "I cannot deny that," said Hannah Frankenstein. "So what?"
"If there is anything vampires cannot stand," said Dracula indistinctly from behind his cape, "it's the smell of garlic."
"What a pity," said Hannah Frankenstein. "I simply love garlic. I can eat any amount of it. It's been in my blood since my youth in Paris."
"In your blood, too?"
Dracula's eyes widened with horror, and he took another step toward the door. "My dear cousin Dracula," said Aunt Frankenstein, "you do look pale and drawn, I must say. I wonder whether it is some form of iron deficiency, or is your diet a trifle one-sided? Have you never heard of a balanced diet?" At that moment, someone knocked at the door, and Dracula jumped. "Come in!" cried Hannah Frankenstein. The door opened, and Igor peered in. "Oh, excuse me," he said when he saw Dracula. "I'm sorry if I'm disturbing you. I was looking for a bandage for Franz. Only a scratch, nothing serious." Did he have to sound so insinuating? Thought Hannah Frankenstein. Dracula stepped forward.
"You're not disturbing me in the slightest, Igor," he said. "I was just on my way out, madam, with your permission."
With a swift drapery-like motion, he did his bat trick and flapped out through the door.